Let's talk about the most extreme case of Saffron. What you're seeing here is Kazac's debuff swapped at the last second on Thaddeus. So he's blessed now. He's not on the same stack as the tank. On Sapph Polarity, you're going to have two different groups like this that both run in slightly staggered so that one group that all has one kind of debuff is together and not near the other side of the raid that has the other debuff, right? So you're setting up in this position. The group that doesn't have the main tank, they can expect to possibly not need to lip. Most groups would still tell you to lip, but this is an example of Giga Pump. So this guy uses Mighty Rage. He doesn't have to use a dummy, so he's able to Healthstone here and just full blast. This isn't a perfect kill. Some people do get owned at the end, but as far as this guy's damage goes, Kazakh did over 10k damage on this fight, so just absolutely blasted. And yeah, that's kind of like the most extreme that you're gonna see, right? As far as how Sapph can go, this is probably not your experience. So I want to set that expectation that people's experience on Saffron is going to be different. And I want to talk about our first time as a fresh daily raid 2 years ago almost on Halloween. We talked about this before. This was a wipe on KT. So what is my biggest recommendation for Saffron is preparation. Saffron is a fight that it's all about how many consumes you throw at it, as well as just general knowledge and ability to get to that raid with as much as possible, or that raid boss, I should say. So what this raid does in Fresh Daily is we practice Spider Wing, Plague Wing, the easy stuff in Death Knight Wing, and the easy stuff in A-Bomb over and over and over. Took us about 8 to 10 iterations to feel really comfortable and confident to do Sapph and KT. You're not going to have that much time on anniversary if you want to be getting a lot of splinters and stuff, right? So that's probably why I'm making these videos. So hopefully we can speed up that level of progression and knowledge a little bit. But the idea is that we are going to start with Spiderwing without buffs out. Spiderwing often just chisels away at some buffs. So the idea is that if you can do Spiderwing in like 20 minutes without buffs, just keep the raid moving, practice some mechanics. It's kind of just like a little bit of a stretch and a warm up. That's a good wing to just get out of the way where you don't have to take your buffs out. So after that, we go ahead into A-Bomb Wing and we take our buffs out at Patchwork. We could clear a little bit more trash in Death Knight Wing or Plague Wing. In advance, Plague Wing would be really the only one that is relevant in this mindset. But anyways, we don't do that. We just go straight from Spider and we take our buffs out at Patchwork. So once our buffs out are at Patchwork, we continue forward with all of A-Bomb Wing and just hope that A-Bomb Wing goes clean. And same with Plague Wing. So once we get to Patchwork, all of A-Bomb Wing after that, then all of Plague Wing, then we put away our buffs. So as we finish Plague Wing here, we have almost 20 minutes of our buffs left, and having these extra resources from War Chiefs and Songflower really is beneficial on a fight like Saffron and KT. A little bit tougher to have our buffs going into KT, but if you do a full wing like this, of full Spider Wing, as well as maybe a little bit of A-Bomb, or you could clear a little bit of other trash um, in Plague Wing, but we just kill that trash in Plague Wing once we have our buffs out. We could save, like 3-4 minutes on buffs pretty easily doing that. But anyways, then we put our buffs away for Death Knight Wing. So Death Knight Wing is really dangerous on Resuvius, how things can just go wrong. And on Gothic, you don't really need your buffs, right? Gothic is a fight that's slow, and it just kind of burns time on the raid. So as long as you know the basic mechanics on Gothic, you don't do anything crazy, you can have your buffs away on Gothic really easily. So just explaining a little bit of how we go into the ability to get to Saffron and KT early on is just saving our resources as much as possible, doing a little bit of res parsing, and then gridding our way through Four Horsemen with buffs as well. So having buffs for A-Bomb Wing, for Patchwork, that's really the big thing is in A-Bomb Wing to have buffs out for. Then on Lotheb it's really helpful. and on Four Horsemen. Those are kind of big DPS tank checks, healer times where it's good to have a bigger pool of mana, all those things, right? So for all those different reasons, having buffs in those three wings is really good. In Spider Wing, there isn't really that same level of pressure. You just can kind of go slow on Mexna, but not so slow that as long as you get through one round of um, killing it once the enrage starts. So as soon as the stun ends, then you go in. Anyways, I'm explaining a lot of stuff besides Sapphiron, so I'm gonna have to put like an intro little bit here to explain. Saffron is all about getting there, right? Once you get to Saffron, you can lick your wounds and figure out where you're at. The more people that have the buffs, the more people that have um, frost resist, consumables, all that kind of stuff, then you're set up for Saffron. So fortunately, some of our raid was in that case here. We'll just go ahead and now talk about a little bit of the individual prep that you can do for Saffron as a raider. My recommendation as a healer on Saffron is that Frost Resist is a secondary priority for you. As a shaman, that's the one healer class more than any other that I've heard it's still beneficial to get some of the um, epic frost resist. So some of the cloth pieces can be really good. The cloak, rings, just something so that you have like 150 so that you're still able to output something but just not tick down so much because you don't have as much self-healing. That's kind of the nice thing about being a priest is you can just renew yourself or once in a while use a big greater not well greater heal throughout. You're just using greater heal on yourself. Um, but also prayer of heal, right? There's just a greater toolkit for you as a priest, and that's kind of the setup that the alliance raids are going to optimally have, right? In an alliance raid, you're going to have four paladins, seven priests, and a resto druid, 12 healers ideally in your comp. So in that case, a priest basically in every group, besides the main tank group or caster group with the warlocks, and that just allows you to distribute your healers properly for this fight. So you have the four paladins all prioritizing both staying alive, but even more so keeping the main tank alive. I've started this fight talking about healing because it's really an important fight for healers. It's one of the few times that like your healer core makes or breaks the fight. Same with Patrick, same with Lotheb, but it really is evident on Saffron when you have an exceptional raid of healers. So each time that you have a healer death, it's a really big deal, especially early on. Reduces the amount of mana that the raid just has, right? So as soon as you can on this fight as a healer, like 20, 30 seconds in, you want to be using your mana consumes and just keeping them rolling. There is the off put then of if you don't need to use your mana consumes, you could use more defensive consumes, like have a Hellstone ready rather than a Dark Rune, or have a Frost Pot rather than a Mana Pot. But realistically, it's only basically the Paladins that can think that way. Paladins are just so crazy in their output where they can heal the main tank the whole time and heal themselves once in a while and just not have to worry too much. So the other great thing about Paladins is that you can keep Judgment of Light up. Very, very powerful spell. Druids have a super important role on Fairy Fire, of course, just so the raid has more output, making sure that's always kept up. But the decurses are super, super important. We haven't really talked about much of the mechanics of this fight yet. You're seeing it go into air phase and us managing through air phases. But for now, we're still just talking about like some basic roles and class things to think about, right? Um, so the idea of the healers is you need to put that mask of the air mask on yourself, like you're in a flight. I'm being a terrible flight attendant, but mask on yourself before your partner. And the reason for that is every healer that dies you screw over the raid. I said it once or twice already. You're seeing it here where we've lost a couple healers now. And losing 1 or 2 DPS, it's not the end of the world. It's really bad to lose the mages for the decurses. Decurses are super important. But each healer that you have, it just starts to tick down the different groups, right? Because each healer is either responsible for their group or the main tank. And in either case, both of those are really, really bad. So talking about Horde side more often are going to have a different positioning of the raid where they are split up, and that makes your role even more important. The typical lazy strat for Alliance at this point is having everyone at the same side. I think for Horde it's totally viable to have everyone on the same side as well. I think it's just a little bit safer and um, more brain dead. But the main thing to understand, like I said with Shamans, is the importance of Frost Resist more than anything else, and just like really chugging consumables and using everything in your toolkit because it's tough. Um, you are able to keep your Frost totem up. Um, that's really the most important thing from my understanding. You can take a. Um, I'm showing my greenness at Shaman. Wind Fury, of course, is the most important thing. Um, you're not going to be twisting very much. You're just going to be trying to maintain what you have and finding what's optimal. I'll have to do a little bit more Shaman coverage later because it's definitely not my specialty. My specialty is somehow surviving through some scuffed Sapphrons. So let's go ahead and talk about the basic mechanics and get on the same page with those. Once we talk about mechanics, then we can talk about strategy. And I kind of jumped the gun in retrospect talking about healing first, but I just feel the need to talk about it because there's so much to go into with healing. But we'll go ahead and talk about tanking and DPSing after that and just general positioning. But you'll understand general positioning better once you know the mechanics. So there's a cleave. It's tough for the melee here. They're getting absolutely owned by the other mechanic. You don't want to go too far back. There's a tail whip. So melee are stuck in the middle here, but they often have nowhere to go because of this blizzard. There's a blizzard that's going to happen throughout this fight on the ground, and melee, like I said, they can't go to the side for the tail whip, can't go to the front for the cleave, so all they can do is go forward and back here. And ideally there are some like semi-safe spots. You see how like this warrior, they're able to hit safely. It looks a little scary, but you just kind of have to understand the hitbox and know how to deal with the blizzards. We're just barely holding on here where the main tank is not dying, and healers are able to keep themselves alive, and some of the DPS are staying alive. So it's absolutely bloody. Main tank is just barely surviving here, but we do pull it off. So very bloody, very unclean, but this was our first Sapphiron clear. And I'm just showing this because, again, basic idea is that healers really carry this raid and just have to keep your tank alive. We've talked really just mainly about the ground phase. The other mechanic to understand is the Frost Blast and the bolts that go out. So during this ground phase here, you're just decursing the raid instantly. Shadow Curse goes out. It doesn't really heal the boss that much. It's just really deadly on your raid. It does a lot of damage to people. So you need to decurse quickly, and ideally you pre-pop both a Frost and a Shadow Pot to deal with the mechanic of the passive ticking that is going out throughout this fight. It's 600 basically constantly if you don't have any Frost Resist, and then it goes down from there if you have more Frost Resist. So generally, to feel a decent level of comfort, like I said before, about 150 as a base level for everyone from gear is often a discussion point. 150 in a more like full buffed raid that is able to blast, you can expect to have a requirement closer to 100. So again, talking about mechanics now. During this air phase here, different people are going to get hit by the blast. And this raid doesn't do a great job of handling that. We're going to see some other raids that do much better of spreading out and not all getting hit by these different blasts. These blasts do a splash of damage on the ground. Oh, do we beat it here? Okay, yeah, I gotta go back more. So, yeah, when it goes in the air here, some melee are still like getting close to the boss and hitting it and getting knocked back over and over, but most of them do a pretty good job of spreading out. The problem that happens is all of the healers are up front here, and all of the melee DPS are down here and don't have anyone to heal them. So having an equal mix of healers and DPS around each area is really important. Some people do a lot more prep in terms of where to stand and stuff like that. Um, I often don't, to be real with you, and we just kind of YOLO it, but definitely could do a better job of that. So when these blasts go out, you want to be spread out and you have someone call them out audibly. So first blast. Okay, look around. Second blast, look around. Third blast, look around. Fourth blast, look around. Around 3, 4, 5, that's when you really need to be aware of your positioning as a raider. And if there's nothing nearby you, start getting ready to go. You don't want to all stand behind the blast super early. What happens here is, I think I called it wrong, where I said, okay, move, and there was still one more blast that went out. So right here, some people start standing all super stacked, and they all get hit by the blast. So really unfortunate and scary, not ideal. So you don't all go behind the different blocks until all the fifth blast has gone out. You only start running if you're super far and you don't have much options. The big thing here is the main tank always making it. So the one person that can always move early just to make sure they get behind a block is the main tank. This is a fight that you can't taunt, and we can start just talking a little bit more about main tank stuff because I just immediately start cringing thinking about it. This is a fight where you can totally screw your raid, or one person can screw the raid. Little story again, Risen was going to be one of the first NA raids to clear Nax. They wiped on Sapph because a paladin accidentally used DI on the main tank, and that wipes threat. So, really unfortunate misclick that just wiped the raid. So, don't do that. Make sure that the main tank always is ready to go. Um, Needs to be on the ball. If you DC on this fight, probably a wipe. You're not going to be able to get behind the block if you DC for a longer period of time, and you're just dead, right? Um, so main tank, much mitt as possible. On the opener of this fight, I'm using Death Wish and trying to blast as much as I can so that people can get a threat lead. But that's really scary, so make sure that you have Stone Shield on, make sure that the full raid is healing the main tank on the opener of this fight. This is likely for a lot of people longer than a 3 minute fight, so you're going to have two Death Wish opportunities probably. Multiple consumable opportunities. Sorry, I need to sneeze and I just can't. Ugh. Okay, so yeah, continuing forward here. DPS have it pretty easy. It's just the decursors that need to decurse, the melee that don't need to die. Warlocks, it's all about. And man, I just need to sneeze so bad. We are, as warlocks, just survival mode. Anything that you can do to have additional health per 5, I think, is worth it. So one warlock typically will have an imp out for this fight. Other warlock can sacrifice a void walker and just have a lot of passive health regen, I think, is viable. You're not going to be doing a ton of damage as a caster on this fight. Mages is focused on decurse, like I said, so they can be a little bit higher in frost resist as well as warlocks. Because again, you're not focused on damage, you're focused on survival, especially in prog fights, is what I'm saying. Kind of same for rogues. Like rogues, you can balance between having 200 frost resist and just not dying and making things a little bit easier for the rest of the raid. As long as you're all hitting the boss with warriors and getting health back from Judgment of Light, it is pretty noticeable to have that. Um, yeah, DPS have it pretty easy. Hunters, higher frost resist, just don't die. use defensives often. Pretty simple, really. As the main tank, like I said, putting on a shield 20 seconds in, 30 seconds in after your Death Wish is up. Until then, trying to blast and get a threat lead so later they don't catch you. This is one of the few fights in Nax that later on in the fight, it's pretty easy to get caught on threat for a lot of tanks. Not a whole ton else to say. I'm trying to think of different points here. If you have the main tank die, it's about a 95% chance of a wipe. You can have one of the off-tank warriors be second on threat and instantly try and pick it up and shield wall, and that can stabilize the raid for a little bit. So maybe having a couple of the off-tank warriors not use their wreck on this fight is good. I think there's also the argument to use wreck on the next fight rather than this. So a lot of times we are not using wreck on this boss. If you get the boss down to 10%, it will not do any more air phases. So in fast, high DPS groups, you're going to only have one air phase, where Sapph player you have 0, but most groups that are high DPS will have 1, and average solid DPS groups are going to have 2 air phases. So just knowing how to deal with those air phases, that's the most dangerous time. If someone dies to the Frostbolt, it really can start making things really, really rough. It's all about surviving through those air phases when you're taking the passive ticking damage and the big chunks of damage from the Frost Blasts. So there's a whole ton of like little things that we could talk about. Sometimes you don't need to run like right behind the block. You can be a little bit angled, where a couple steps behind it. It's just one of those things that you get a feel for. Again, you don't move to them early. Once the 5th is out, then you get behind the block. And during that air phase is when you want to use a Frostpot as a defensive, as a DPS, when that heavier amount of damage is going out. Other than that, saving defensives for whippers and healthstones, making sure everyone has healthstones really good. Again, having the pre-pop of the shadow pot is really, really valuable. Highly recommend that. The priest buff, shadow resistance, it's kind of helpful. It doesn't really seem to do much as far as making people resist the curse more, so don't worry about that too much. Biggest thing is just doing the basics right. Having those extra consumables, those frost reflectors, making sure that people have all their gear enchanted. That's a really common phrase and theme on this boss. So we'll just, excuse me, we'll watch a couple other attempts here. I clearly need to get water, so let me just go ahead and we'll just listen to this start here. I have no clue how cringe this is, so buckle up.
That are spreading out. We are keeping our own groups topped, so each priest has their group, and then heirs is
so this is like our third week of Sapph.
Mages. We got to keep the mages alive. We have any jobs? It's
My
really
mic
simple.
is really terrible.
Stand one gets hit. 15.
Okay, so a really terrible mic. This is cringe. It's always fun looking back at old VODs. So let's just listen to this for a minute here.
Here we go. Get ready to heal. No damage at the start.
Or you move forward and backwards. It does Blizzard.
That's what should keep me alive. Keep me alive. Decurse. Everyone's focused on decurses.
Move forward a little bit.
Yeah, I'm good.
Just a little bit.
I got a shield on now.
Not to the right, guys. You gotta look straight on me.
Forward and back, not side to side.
Decurse too?
Decurse.
I need to get closer.
Decurse, decurse, decurse. Alright, we're topping off our groups. Top off the groups. And let's just use a frostbot now. Everyone frostbot now.
I'm
There's one, there's two. Both sides, that's good placement.
Get rid of the inch a little over.
Here we go,
Looking.
go.
Find shelter.
Move, go. Bandage stick.
Group stopped. Heal bleed.
Sunder.
Deeker.
Decurse.
Yeah, this one is a little cringe. 19's definitely talking over me. This was, I think, like the second or third week he was with us. Definitely got into the vibe a little bit more. But you hear the basic words, right? Like we just call out, heal the tank, decurse, count the different ice bolts that go out, watch out for blizzards, where to stand as melee. We have like one or two melee marked, and this one was much cleaner. We were able to keep healers alive much longer. We B-resed one or used a soulstone. It's often good to use soulstones on the druids. You really want to keep the druids alive. And yeah, in this one we have, what is it, like 6 priests? Yep, 6 priests and 2 druids. That's a little bit less optimal in that way. But also have, I think, 5 pallies, so a little bit extra. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, yeah. Just having a little bit extra of healing is good. So on your first couple times doing Sapph, it can be helpful to have an extra healer too. So we'll watch one more time now of Sapph. Again, we kept having some issues. So it looks like I died here. I guess we did 4 Horsemen unboon potentially, or with our boons away. Looks like we had a really, really rough 4 Horsemen. I don't really remember this. Let's see where I die on 4 Horsemen. I'm gonna guess it's Mograine. It's always Mograine. So yeah, I'm on Mograine, and I just die. So we managed to pull off this kill. That's great. Definitely wasn't clean. So anyways, let's set up for this Sapphiron here. We'll watch one more of this Prog Sapph, and then we'll watch quickly a Horde Sapph, and you can see a little bit of that. Okay, so going into Sapph again, you can pre-shield people, but the big thing is that if everyone has a frostbite on, no one's taking damage besides the tank on the opener. So you can also do amp magic on the raid. That's something I didn't mention yet. Making sure that everyone has amp magic for this fight is good. You don't want to do dampen magic. You want to do amp. Okay, so again, we're just watching out for blizzards. Some people are like super, super far range. Like, look how far that warrior is. It's still able to hit. I think that is a good example of showing how far in or out you can go. So we spread out now. The scary part is that the tank often is far to one side, right? So I would often recommend that the tank instantly just move to like the middle. That way it's easier for them. Okay, so the tank got hit here, kind of ideal. But yeah, we all get behind the blocks. We recover. Start healing some people. The main tank quickly getting back to the front of Sapphiron each time is kind of a big deal. Otherwise, Sapphiron can actually accidentally cleave a lot of people. So quickly making sure that you get back to where you were is important. Okay, so we kind of have a lot of tanks marked here as well. That's something that's not super great. We really should just have like the one tank marked. But we're doing it, keeping it clean. So again, we have multiple air phases we're dealing with in these slower kills. We do have some deaths. The main tank, it's often can be helpful if they use a shield wall if things are getting a little rough. So while they shield wall, one or two of the paladins can then top themselves, some other healers off, and people can just kind of stabilize a little bit more. So we only have a couple deaths that time. It's just about keeping the healing output sustained. So as much as possible as healers can stand still and just keep heals pumping, that's the name of the game. So let's watch a Deathless Nax now on Horde side. Shout out to Koopa for this. Again, they're on both sides. And look, so they fight Sapphiron on the opposite to start. So it doesn't really matter which way you face Sapphiron, really doesn't matter. Groups just do their preferred strat, so just pick your preferred strat. We always do the opposite, but really doesn't matter. So again, these guys have people on both sides. Looks like there's frost resistance totems down, strength of earth totems down, and wind fury totems down. I'm also seeing healing totems down. So healing stream looks to be the thing to do. I remember that now. Okay, so they go back in and out. Easy peasy. Chain heal on all the melee that are stacked together, and you just kind of move around the blizzards. That's really it. Throughout, the shamans are then just pumping. And that's it. So I think on this fight you saw they were using Fetish on Horde side. I think that's really good on the opener of this bull. So you can just blast harder. The Warlock almost bulls here. I mean, they're not really because they still got like 30%, but I have seen casters that are mages, I should say. Mages, if they get a really crazy ignite, there have been cases where their knight just carries during air phase and then comes back down and causes chaos. So the biggest thing is just the main tank always has top threat, and you just take this fight slow and methodically. Lots more I could say, but let's just go ahead and get to talking about KT now again. There's just so much to talk about. It's really overwhelming, and each group has kind of some own scenarios that we'll continue to talk about, and I'll just show more and more examples of these bosses as we go. But just have to get the discussion going, right? So just know for a while now I've been wanting to make this kind of stuff, and I just feel pressured to make it now so you guys have some sort of semblance of knowledge and some base levels of stuff. So best thing to do is just get more and more content out, right? And from here it can get refined, and that's what phase one is all about, getting set up for the future. Phase one of KT is super boring. It's a fight that's gotten quicker. So you're watching a 2-year-old version of this fight that was slower at this point, I believe. This is a long fight. Not much to do during this downtime besides hit some skeletons and the weavers and the abominations. So the unstoppable abominations, they can be stunned. You don't really want to intercept into them. You want to wait till they get a little bit closer to the raid. Then rogues can stun them. Hodges are really, really powerful. You can cycle a order of Hodges between the paladins. But the best thing that you can do is have a paladin that does king spam. So, dang, I don't have that right here. I'll have to include another example of the best, most powerful thing that you can do on KT is have a paladin tank that knows how to do king spam appropriately. Telling you it's the biggest cheese that you can do. There's a couple other cheeses that are questionable as far as like how you can deal with ads and stuff the Chinese way. Maybe you've seen that version that they pioneered over there. It's questionable if it's really even allowed. I think for logs it messes up logs. So yeah, the problem is that these skeletons, if you are top threat and in melee range of the skeletons, they do an AoE that destroys the raid. It does like 2k, 3k damage to the entire raid instantly. And if you have 2 or 3 of those happen at the same time, you just wipe. And you saw in the last video where I posted recently our first attempt in KT, where we just pulled a couple skeletons that we killed, and people that were melee were killing them without realizing that no one else had top threat, and we wiped. So easiest thing to do is have a priest or other caster in each of these cubbies. Horde have this easy where they can put Earthbind totem down, and using that Earthbind totem, the skeletons come in super slow, and you can just use some easy spells to kill them quickly. So that makes it pretty simple on Horde side, but on Alliance side it's even simpler if you have a paladin that is doing that king spam. But again, you're seeing no tech used in this raid, and we just have a fine time. You just make sure that it's a main tank on these A-bombs. They do hit really hard. So casters, priests, you're DPSing the little skeletons. Mages and warlocks are taking care of these soul weavers. You want to put Curse of Elements on the soul weavers. If the weavers get close to the raid like this, as long as the melee are not top threat, they can help and finish off the weavers. So you saw there one weaver was not too close to the cubby. If you get too close to the cubbies, you're going to pull a cubby and then it gets scary. So just know that's not great. But yeah, at the end here, the cubbies will despawn. You want to start using different abilities that if you get mind controlled, you'll be safe. So these weavers, if the person that's top threat is in melee range, it's kind of same idea as the skeletons. It's really, really bad. Whole raid gets AoE'd that's nearby them, and it can potentially wipe your raid instantly. So I think that's the basic mechanics of phase 1. Let's talk about the mechanics of KT now. The most important thing to understand is positioning on KT. Everyone kind of has the generic same spots that you stand. Melee will be in 4 different stacks, and the casters spread out. That's the basics. The details don't matter too much besides the paladin that's doing the king spam. It is kind of ideal if they're just above the main tank like this. But other than that, doesn't matter too much positioning. It's good to kind of spread the mages out, so that way the mages can be ready to polymorph anyone nearby them or Frost Nova. Because again, the positioning matters basically for every different mechanic. Let's talk about why now. The biggest reason positioning matters is the Frost Blast. See how everyone just got hit by that tomb? Only one group got hit because when KT targeted someone, the person that it targeted was only in range of these people. They weren't in range of these other people, so they didn't get hit by the blast. Sometimes when KT will target someone, that person will be in range of 2 different groups, or maybe even 3 different groups. It's very important you keep control. As soon as this Frost Blast happens, you're then going to have to heal every single person that got hit by the Frost Blast once or twice quickly. So early on here, Waumbek doesn't have like the debuff tracker. That's really an important thing for healers to have, but has good reaction as far as getting 1 or 2 heals on people that he's seeing taking the damage, and survives. That is back to just healing the tank, and we're blasting this thing down pretty quickly until the mind control happens. So this is another reason positioning is important. You want to be able to handle these mind controls and just hold your ground during these sort of things happening, because you're also dealing with 2 other position-based things. The Void Blasts, if it's on the ground, you have to move, and the Mana Detonation. If you get Mana Detonation, you are in trouble if you move on top of other people. So here, KT targets someone, and we're just not in great stacks. Some of these people are way too close. They're not on star properly. Tips of the dress, really, I guess we were just, in general, all kind of too close, though. So very impressive that healers were able to keep 2 groups alive. So this shows here, shamans have it really easy with NS chain heal, but priests and paladins are able to save people pretty quickly too. So at this point, we're really blasting. We've handled multiple mechanics of 2 times people getting hit by the Frost Blast and the mind control happening as well. When the mind control happens, it's really, really dangerous. It drops threat. So whoever is tanking KT is one of the people that's going to get mind controlled. So the off tanks need to be ready to quickly do threat abilities, pick up the boss when the threat draw happens after a mind control. So the rest of the raid, you only want to be focused on CC. Magic Dust is like your most powerful cheat consumable. If you Magic Dust someone that's mind controlled and don't cleave them, it's just really, really powerful. Most raids aren't going to have many mages, so Magic Dust is super, super powerful. So we move out of the void zones. This is just a really good KT kill for us. At the end of KT, these ads spawn, so this is another time where a paladin can do the king spam, and it's super powerful. But we just do hunters putting some frost traps down, shackling 3 of the ads, and you just burn KT once it gets to the end of its fight, and you just kill it quickly. At the end of KT, it is a DPS race, so that's why you're hoping that most of the raid is alive, and you are able to use some cooldowns, and you just blast it down. There's a couple different times that it's arguable to use your cooldowns. Some people, as soon as the boss spawns, they're all going to use their cooldowns and just hope for a super fast kill where mind controls don't happen. You can get just kind of lucky on KT where you don't see mechanics for long periods of time. It's a very RNG fight. So in some ways it's good to just use your cooldowns right away. Or some people, they're going to use their cooldowns like Death Wish with about a minute and a half left on the phase 1. And then that means during phase 2, if they get mind controlled in the first minute and a half, they're not going to have their cooldown, right? And then after a minute and a half, they're then going to pop their cooldowns and hope that it's like good timing. So again, KT here, let's just see more fights of this. We'll then watch the Horde version where they didn't have any deaths on KT. So this was bad. We were just getting hit by skeletons because people are hitting them that are melee. You just don't want to get near the skeletons if you are not sure about their threat situation. So it's not the end of the world though. The nice thing about the long part of phase 1 is that you can use a mana pot kind of early and just recover. But going into this start of KT, you want to be in your best position possible. You want to have full mana. You want to be ready to go. So this is what happens. We pulled a cubby here. I'm not really sure how the cubby pulled. Maybe it was, yeah, I don't know actually. But you just don't get close to the cubby, that's the key. Right here, it looks like that a warrior runs in and 19 maybe tried to grief us. He hits some skeletons. We almost wipe here. This is crazy. The fact that we didn't die to this, kind of wild. So fortunately no one dies, and we then set up for KT. We get in position. We need to finish off that Weaver though. It's really important. I forgot to mention the importance of kicking here. I think I get hit by a Frostbolt. My health gets really low because of it. So throughout this fight, you need to be kicking as well. That's one thing that's not super positioning based, but just making sure that the kicks happen is really, really important. So this is a fight that you don't really want to use MPA on, is the argument. Just Sunders and keeping Cursive Wreck up the whole time is probably just as good. It's a boss that has lower armor is my understanding. So again, look what happens after the mind control goes out. Actually, so I had top threat and then Bran ripped top threat off me. So this worked out kind of well, where I just backed off a little bit, I think, or I just suck on threat, one of the two. And because of that, the mind control then happens. So mind control happens, Brand is mind controlled instead of me. I'm just able to pump threat again, and I then am now tanking KT. So just making sure that you quickly have 2 or 3 main tanks on this fight is really important. You want to have 2 or 3 of your guys in like tier 3, at least a 4 set on that. just so you're extra tanky. KT hits really hard, it doesn't hit super often, so it's just dealing with the wombo combo of the volley that goes out in combination with 1 or 2 melees. So as a raid here, you're kind of waiting to time your blast, or sorry, your frost pot, dealing with the frost blast. So in this time here, we know that frost blast is available. This is a good time to pop your frost pot. No volley likely coming soon, like right after the volley goes out, then using a frost pot. So like let's look at it again. After frost blast goes out here, at this point, once you see frost blast going out, next volley, let's wait for the next volley to go out. It didn't happen, so we wouldn't have used our frostbite here because the frost blast happened instead. Tanks should be using Stone Shield. Okay, so again, Frost Blast is now off cooldown. Volley just happened, so now we'd Frostpot now. Right now we'd Frostpot, and hopefully the Frost Blast will happen in a second. We might not time it well. Okay, so yeah, if Frost Blast had happened on the melee and everyone had just used their Frostpot, it would have been a lot safer. So we're nearing the end of the fight now. You can Hodge these ads as well. You can Nova them. You can use Goblin Rocket Helm on them. So got a little bit sketched, but that was pretty good. Only had a couple deaths. Alright, so on Horde side, let's just kind of look at the situation again. Earthbind totems at every single spot here. Okay, so moving forward, nothing really exciting during the start here. It's just shamans doing their lightning stuff, frost shocks, killing the skeletons, finishing off the weavers, and now blasting. So lots of chain heals going out, shamans just spread out. Shamans can Earth Shock KT as well, so that could be a gamer play. The real fear is the mind control, right? When KT mind controls people, if they have dangerous abilities available, it gets a lot worse. PIs are really dangerous. So this is a really dangerous combo. They handled this perfectly. The fact that they had 0 deaths at the worst possible time right here is very impressive. So mind control happens at the same time as Frost Blast. Worst case scenario. So GG clearance gets really low there. They do some quick sheeps, and it looks like that it looked like, yeah, so one of the druids does a big heal, and they get a big heal off on GG clearance. Those ads then run to big black cow because they did a big heal, got a lot of threat. So while those warriors then are running across, they get more CC on these other people. So they do a good job of handling that first round of bad RNG. And now it seems like they get pretty good RNG. They're just blasting away, all in their different stacks. They back up, and so this is important. If Frost Blast is available, you don't want to go side to side like this. But if Frost Blast is not on cooldown, not something that's available, it was just recently cast, then you can kind of go side to side like they did. But they just all use their cooldowns here, sappers and stuff at the end at this point. They're just really blasting and trying to kill this quickly. And they did it. So, Deathless Nax on Horde side, very impressive. So, yeah, I think there's a couple more things to talk about with this fight. As far as rogues go, kicks are really important. Blind is really valuable. Just staying alive and having different forms of CC and survivability, really good for rogues. Druids, you don't have too much to do besides you can just kind of keep the raid alive through raid heals. besides your normal stuff of Fairy Fire. And good B-reses are really important, making sure that people don't take the B-res until after the volley goes out. A lot of times people will take the B-res and then instantly die because volley happens right after. Warlocks, I think if there's more, like if there's 4 warlocks, or even 3 warlocks, it is definitely good to have Curse of Weakness on this boss. Could be viable. Other than that, just knowing who you have your soul stones on for this fight, definitely important. Fears can be really good to CC people. Death coils. Mages are really, really valuable in this fight. If you are wanting to have a good, clean KT, you could swap some of your melee DPS out for more mages, just so that you have more control and less melee stacks. Having a ton of warriors in this fight is good for the damage, but it's a much tougher fight to have coordination of this many melee. It's an easier fight if you have more hunters, more mages, 3 warlocks is okay, that kind of stuff. In some ways, more DPS is always good, right? That's the best case scenario. But just know that KT is a fight where there's a little bit more value and balance, and not just having so many people that can all get hit by Frost Blast is pretty good, if you understand the basic mechanics. Hunters can really screw this fight over with multi-shots, so just be really careful on KT with multi-shot. You don't want to use it in phase 1 at all, and during phase 2 you got to be really careful to not hit people out of CC. You can be really powerful with Rocket Helmet and Frost Traps on KT, so just know hunters are pretty potentially impactful. But most impactful classes is probably Priest and Paladin. Paladins can turn undead in phase 3 on those ads, so that really helps in addition to shackles. You can shackle 3 out of 5 of the ads, so just pick the 3 that you're going to do. Be really careful not to do more than 3. Only assign 3 priests to do the shackles. Priests can fear mind-controlled people. Priests are super, super important on this fight, keeping them alive. Priests are really good for helping out with Frost Blasts, where they can instantly shield someone, precast a heal on one person, maybe do a prayer of heal and save a couple people. It's just one of those fights where good priests really make a difference. Shamans, like I said, nature, swiftness, we talked a couple shaman things. I'll have to go in detail with shamans later, but just know that, again, this is a fight where understanding the micro of doing things like earth shock if no one else is kicking, that kind of stuff is just game changing. What else? Warriors. So the main tank, there's times where you're going to potentially shield wall and let everyone else catch up on health. Just make sure that if you put a shield that you're going to be able to hold threat. It's a fight where keeping top threat is important. Everyone's just kind of pumping, and especially after the mind control happens, making sure that the tank quickly picks up the boss is really, really key. Lots of time mages are going to keep their ignite rolling after mind control happens. Easy way to wipe. Easy way to fall apart. As soon as the mind control happens, all mages need to not cast fire. They need to start being ready to sheep and potentially even lip if their ignite goes for a little bit. So again, worst case scenario here, but they handle this perfectly. Bunch of quick chain heals and precast heals on the melee, and just handled. Other things to mention, not a whole ton. I feel like we covered most of the basic stuff. Dispelling the boss, again, if PI happens or a bop happens on KT from a mind control, quickly dispelling the boss is really, really important, purging the boss. Other than that, just basic mechanics and good luck on the loot. Seen some other people talk about the loot, that kind of stuff. I want to focus more on mechanics. Judgment of Light can be good on this boss, but paladins just have to be aware of where they're standing. So 1 second here, and we'll go to paladin and the kite tank perspective. So 1 sec. Alright, so watching a paladin's point of view that's now done this fight like 100 times compared to the first couple, where we have our paladin in the tank group, so they have this extra blood pack, they have Diva aura, Retribution aura on, or whatever it is, Righteous Fury I should say, and just spamming kings over and over and over, using mana pots, using dark runes on cooldown, so that you're keeping constant mana throughout this. So keeping good levels of mana, but just proactively, consistently, reliably doing kings over and over and over on a warrior. Being in the middle of the room when you're doing it. That simple. Okay, so now we're in the second part. During this part, you're mainly keeping the tank alive and making sure you don't die. Gotta blow my nose again, oh no. Oh, sorry. Okay, so we are on to phase 3 now. So during phase 3 here, Waumbek is occasionally doing kings, so the ads are coming to Waumbek. Dealing with mechanics. And surviving. Easy peasy. Didn't do much tanking this time, but didn't have to. Alright, need to stop the video. We did it.